Thanks, all of you, for coming. Oh, we should just jump right in now that we're 8 minutes over. Hey guys, good evening. Welcome to a special town hall with the Board of Education candidates. I'm Pete Pancholy, and I'm one of the leaders of SOMA for a Safe Return to School, along with Gina Priatisa. We're also here. Our group was formed in December 2020 to advocate for the safe reopening of the South Orange and Maplewood schools. Our group includes concerned and involved parents who advocate for prioritizing the learning experiences of students as well as their emotional well-being as the district sets policy that falls within both guidance from health agencies and common sense. Our membership comprises approximately 1,000 members. If you'd like to learn more about the group or join, feel free to follow us on Facebook. Today's town hall will consist of 5 questions, which were sourced from our membership and edited by our leadership team. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each one, and there will be no time allotted for rebuttals. At the end of the event, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make closing remarks. Just a note, we're recording the town hall and we'll share the video publicly afterward. Our group invited all 5 candidates from both tickets to participate in the town hall. Candidates Ritu, Pancholy, and Will Meyer declined our invitation, citing a campaign policy that they would only participate in debates organized by 501c3 groups or PTAs or HSAs. But candidates Regina Eckert, Nubia Wilson, and Bill Gifford, running on the slate Students Come First, accepted, and we'd like to welcome them all here tonight. So to start, each candidate will have some brief remarks to introduce themselves, followed by the questions. Why don't we start with you, Regina?
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to take a second to apologize. I am displaced my in-laws. I have no control of the lighting here. And while their house and they are wonderful hosts, there's nothing I could do about those bright lights. So I apologize. So first, I want to thank the SRS group for hosting us. As a parent that joined this district during the pandemic, I can't thank you enough for your continued advocacy over the past few years to have our kids in school safely, of course. So for those of you who may not know me, I am Regina Eckert. I am a Maplewood resident of almost 6 years. I have a 2nd grader at Tuscan, Alexandra, and a 3.5-year-old son, Lucas. So starting my journey as a parent in this district during a global pandemic was pretty eye-opening. My daughter started her kindergarten year, her first experience in elementary school behind a computer screen, as did most, if not the rest of the country. But our path to getting the kids back in schools for in-person learning lagged behind nearby districts. Ones that were able to get students back in just a few weeks into the school year. The ventilation issues caused both parents and teachers to lose trust that our schools were safe enough to return. There seemed to be a lack of transparency, communication, and accountability on many levels. But we, Nubia, Bill, and I, we see ways that as potential board members, we can work to regain the community's trust. We know that a brighter future is possible, and we see an opportunity to redefine what success looks like in this district by putting the needs of our students first. We truly believe this district can be a great one that provides an enriching education that our children deserve, starting in the early years, and one where teachers feel supported and valued. We're ready to do the work for our kids, our teachers, and the overall SOMA community, and we're excited to share some of our ideas with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, why don't you go next?
I think you're on mute.
Okay, beautiful. Good. I'm good. You can hear me now? Okay,
Yep.
Great. Thank you, SOMA Safe Returns, and thank you for holding this forum. I just want to say I have a lot of respect for SOMA Safe Return. At a time when our public officials, both the board and the superintendent, failed to give us the leadership and initiative to get back to school, this group stepped up. Community organizers, which is what you all are, usually come to be when and where there is a void from our government. For myself, it's the most organic form of democracy at work. While not a perfect parallel, it does remind me of how this ticket came together. All of us had separate journeys that led us to the same conclusion. As parents, we had to step up. We didn't know each other, but we shared a common purpose. We want a board that is responsive and transparent. And we've seen through COVID up until today, we just don't have that right now. As someone who grew up in Maplewood and South Orange, I know we can do better. This was a district that attracted the best teachers, the best students, and the best families. That was the case in 1986, but it doesn't feel so today. I truly believe that the students come first ticket can change our current course, and I look forward to sharing the ways in which we can do that. Again, thank you so much, and I look forward to digging into the issues with you all tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Nubia, why don't you bring us home?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Thank you, Safe Return to Schools, for hosting this town hall. I too have been part of this group during COVID, and it made me feel like we can make a difference for our kids during a time of crisis. So it was really wonderful to be part of this group. So I'm Nubia Wilson. I've been in South Orange for 11 years. I have a 4th grader and a 2nd grader at South Mountain Elementary. And I also went to public school, K through 12 in Maryland. For the past 7 years, I've been running my own public relations agency, supporting local businesses here, and even supporting nonprofits like the Community Coalition on Race. And for the past 2 years, I've been using my communication skills to connect with the administration, quite often with the Safe Return to Schools group, advocating for our kids, and even wrote an op-ed that was published in Village Green about emotional intelligence and how important it is to think about emotional intelligence when you are communicating with parents that have experienced the type of trauma and challenges that we've had in the past 2 years. I've mentioned this many times that I almost left this community, which was a really tough moment for me, just out of fear of what's going to be the future of education for my kids. And I realized that I love this community way too much to leave it. And I wanted to be part of the solution. We have an amazing district here. We have amazing teachers. We have amazing parents. And Regina, Bill, and I are running for the BOE because we want to bring balance to this board. We want to work hard for the community and find solutions to challenges like closing academic gaps for various populations, improving low teacher morale, improving the communication gaps. We want a board that's going to stay connected to the community. And we want a board that's also going to connect with all community groups. With that said, we launched a community survey and a teacher survey during this campaign because that's how much we want to hear from everyone else and hear their voices. My husband always jokes, we have 1 mouth and 2 ears. So our district needs to listen more and not be fearful of what parents have to say. I'm really proud to be running with Regina Eckert and Bill Gifford on the Students Come First slate. And I know if we are able to fill these 3 seats, we will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. So we have our first question. I'm going to read it and then give the candidates some time to respond. We're going to be, we have a little timer going just to keep everyone on track and on schedule. So here we go. Early in the pandemic, the Board of Education recused themselves from being involved with any COVID policies and communicated to parents that the board had no say or influence in any of the decisions. Will you continue the policy of deferring to the superintendent on health matters, especially COVID? And if so, what circumstances would you deem so out of bounds that you would intervene? Regina, do you want to go first?
Sure thing. So as a parent of a child who started in this district during the pandemic, it was really tough for me to see how hands-off the board was in determining COVID policies and in the efforts to get our kids back into school safely. It sure didn't help that boards of neighboring districts were working closely with their superintendent, being more involved in the process. So again, a bit shocking to me that they took that kind of hands-off approach. We were one of the last districts in New Jersey to be back in person. And, it got to a point where township officials had to get involved, within their legal rights, of course. Throughout the pandemic, multiple misguided, if I may, COVID decisions were made without any transparency or accountability. Whether, it first just started to getting back in school, there were plexiglass dividers in the classrooms and in lunchrooms, and also the inconsistency of how that was happening throughout different schools. Close contact and quarantine policies that didn't align with state and CDC guidance. It just felt as if, there wasn't any urgency to make the right decisions for our students. In fact, this group advocated more for our students than board members did for a while. The district wasn't doing its job to ensure that the district schools are operating effectively in service of students. And it is the board's job to ensure that the district is run well by the superintendent. It took a new board member only 2 months into her term to put forth an important proposal for a change in COVID policy after several board members remained hands-off for almost 2 years. Asking the district and the superintendent to clearly communicate how they go about decision-making and what they're looking at in order to make those decisions, which is on a completely reasonable request. If elected, Nubia, Bill, and I, we will show up to the table way before it gets to that. We will get involved when necessary, and we will work hard to bring greater accountability and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Bill, do you want to go next?
Yes, that's right, Regina. Sadly, New Jersey state law did not require school boards to have to vote on any decisions related to district COVID policies, and that was our boards of education's excuse for not doing so. Many districts, however, throughout the state saw the board and the superintendent collaborating and involved in the process, but our Board of Education, the majority, chose to take a very hands-off approach. This hands-off, no accountability approach is something that our current majority believes in and has led to many of the problems we saw during COVID and many other issues we're dealing with now. That must change. We will work to bring greater accountability and much more open and transparent decision-making process to the board. While the board can't always get involved in day-to-day operations, I will not continue the status quo of not holding people accountable, which has gone on for way too long. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill. Nubia.
So Bill and Regina have done a great job of painting this picture for you all. And what I'll add is that I too agree. It was a huge mistake when the board recused themselves. And, the board's job is to govern, right? It is to govern and to ensure that there is accountability from our superintendent. And the board is supposed to stay on the pulse of what community needs and to be involved. And when a board doesn't do that during a moment of crisis, our district was in crisis. It's a huge disappointment because we feel like we're not getting the support that the community needs. And this was, a point when the board really could have risen up and collaborated. Their job is to devise policies and district goals based on its understanding of the needs and priorities of the community. And when they step down, they're not on the pulse of that. So the result of that was parents were rising up, right? They rose up to problem solve, and the parent community here is very hands-on, which I'm sure can be challenging for our school district at times. But at this point, we did what we had to do and we advocated for our students, and I was one of them. And I really do appreciate that. I know that the district and the board can't respond to every single email that they get, and I know they get a lot. But at this time, during those 2 years, I got a response every time from the superintendent. It might not have always been the response I wanted, but I got a response. So it goes to show you that we need a board that is committed to listening to our community. From our community survey, we've learned that parents do not feel heard. They feel disconnected. And that's something that we want to change when we get on the board. Thank you.
Thank you all for answers. On to question 2. In the 2021-22 school year, the district employed virtual learning times, not just for COVID-related absences, but for an election day, as a precautionary member after holiday break, and other circumstances. Virtual learning is a tool of last resort, or is an acceptable alternative to in-person learning to be used in situations where attending school in person may be challenging? And if the former, how you will advocate for eliminating virtual learning as a choice to turn to when these issues come up. Bill, why don't we start this time?
Great. Yeah. While I've been speaking to some people, virtual learning worked for some students, but for many, especially younger students, it's a big problem. We are still dealing with the consequences of the district's decision to be one of the last districts around to go back to in-person. And there are times when virtual learning might be used, say, when we have a water main break, like the one going on right now in Montclair. But instead of having to cancel school and remove vacation days or extending the end of schools when we can by law now use virtual instruction, but it should only be used sparingly and in extreme circumstances. I also personally don't like the idea of using it instead of a snow day, because kids need to be kids and they should go to Underhill Field to sled. While I can't say we might never use it again, I hope that it is always used as a last resort and very sparingly.
All right, Nubia.
Thank you. Look, this was an unprecedented time, right? There was a lot we just didn't know and didn't understand, but now we know so much more, and we can use the past to help us do better in the future. As Bill said, look, some kids thrive during virtual, but we know from the data and the research that most kids did not. Wall Street Journal just put out a story that learning loss was worse in districts that kept classes remote longer. And learning loss has affected high poverty families the most. And I think that's ironic, because many thought that staying home long-term was going to be best for some of our most vulnerable. And ironically, that very same population was the ones that were impacted the most from learning loss. So with that said, when we're thinking about COVID, and Bill, I do agree with you, kids need their snow days. Please let them play in the snow. But when it comes to arming ourselves with, if there's a COVID surge, right? We keep saying we're in a post-COVID world, but look, some people are still getting COVID. We had like a little COVID ordeal at Columbia High School. And so I think there's some things we need to keep in mind. Common sense and science. Look, we have vaccines now, right? They're doing great. And for those that can't be vaccinated, masks are working well as well to protect them. Remote learning exacerbated existing educational inequities and increased mental health crisis. And using remote learning as a default is dangerous for the long-term repercussions. Also, ongoing maintenance of our schools is paramount, right? The long-range facility plan has repairs and replacements for HVAC systems. And I really hope that the current board, and if we're on and if we have the chance to make sure that inspections are being had and that we're ensuring that things were installed correctly. And my husband works in HVAC, so I can always have him ask me. I know a lot about HVAC these days. But lastly, I'll say that we need to stay on top of science and building protocols, right? To ensure that we're consistently providing environments that are green, that are modernized to protect the air quality in our classrooms. Thank you.
Great. And Regina?
Thank you. Bill and Nubia, you did a great job covering everything. But, for me, I would, again, just reiterating, while virtual learning may have worked for some students, it didn't work for many, and including my daughter. And she really suffered during remote school, especially as a kindergartner who was used to socializing with her friends and her classmates all day long. So I will say that when the district released this year's back to school guidelines, I won't pretend that I didn't do a happy dance to see that things are returning to normal, right? The first step, no virtual school for COVID absences. The reality is if your child is sick, they should be resting and recuperating. This is true of any sickness. I also want to acknowledge that virtual school is a huge burden on our teachers to teach both in person and virtual simultaneously. Listen, they did an amazing job pivoting during the pandemic, many without any support and training. But let's not use that as an excuse to use remote learning as an alternative for anything other than what our policy dictates. Research, Nubia talked about, the research shows that there's a greater impact in districts that kept classes remote. It has negatively impacted the lower income families the most. And so I'm really encouraged by the fact that we've taken great strides this school year to keep the students in school as much as possible. And, I'm not even going to say we will always advocate that it should only be considered as a last resort and in accordance to our current policy. Thank you.
Thank you. On to our next question, which is about transparency. So transparency has been an ongoing concern with the BOE and the superintendent. Much of the business conducted by the board is done in private executive sessions, thereby excluding the public from understanding the decision-making process and the specific positions of board members. For example, it's unclear how much federal COVID funding the district received and how that funding was spent. Do you support an audit of COVID funding in the district? What are other ways you would improve transparency? Nubia, can you kick us off?
Sure, definitely. So we, first I want to say that we as a community have a right to know about our district budgets, right? You can find a lot of information online, but it isn't always easy to read and understand. They're quite complicated, but because of the sunshine laws, we do have a right to have access to these budgets. And I will add that we received a lot of money. I was able to investigate further about our American Rescue Plan. So the American Rescue Plan gave us $3.6 million. And that money needed to be allocated to various things like instructional programs, ventilation upgrades, general support for kids and for learning loss. 20% of that money that we received has to go to learning loss. There was a presentation that was made in 2021, thanks to Village Green to be able to find it very easily. And during that presentation, they talked about ideas for how to use this money. A lot of it was for social and emotional recovery, which was great, as well as some summer learning programs. What I have not been able to find is clear tracking of some of these things. And I think that is one of my hot buttons for this district. So for example, the summer learning programs, I know that they happen. How is that being tracked, and how do we know that these children are continuing to progress and do well? So in addition to that, I do appreciate that current board members are trying to water down, I guess you could say, our financials. Arun has been sharing financial data from the School of Board Estimate meeting about transportation, and he's been doing this FAQ series. Now, the unfortunate thing is not everybody's Arun's friend on Facebook. That's a small population that's getting access to its FAQ. But what it represents is we need to have more access to our financials, and the board needs to find a way to do it effectively. We know that they've done town halls in the past, meetings in the past with the community to go over budgets, not this current board, but boards in the past. And so it's feasible to do, especially when we are in the red in some departments. We need to be able to regain confidence with our board and the decisions they're making financially, and transparency is the best way to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Nubia. Regina?
Yes. So one thing that I have learned throughout this whole campaign trail, one of many things, is, the board is in fact obligated to do its work in public, outside, of course, of, litigation and personnel staffing. And, the budget is one of the many things that requires greater understanding to the general public. It is a very complex document. I've had both current and former board members tell me, they came into it and, it took hours and hours of just onboarding to really understand how our budget works. So if you can imagine, kind of the layman's community member coming into it, they really have no clue what they're seeing. And we know through our community survey that the budget and how money is spent is actually a really big concern that needs to be addressed now. So specifically for COVID funding, I think Nubia had kind of mentioned some numbers, but we know that there was over a 6.6 million increase in federal aid in 2021 to 22 alone. Based on a presentation during the May 2021 board meeting, which we found via Village Green. Let's talk transparency. It looks like the breakdown of costs only adds up to about a little over $1 million. So how was the rest of the money spent? A similar conversation around transportation during the 2022 year planning meeting. The business administrator at the time, Paul Roth, had allocated an additional $1.5 million to transportation to plan for the intentional integration initiative, yet transportation was reduced. Where did the money go? I think we've seen a lot of people ask that question. If elected, we will make it a priority to publish meeting notes, especially those that happen behind closed doors like committee meetings, in a timely fashion. We're going to make our best efforts to educate and empower the public, our community, on why decisions are made. The fact that community members, not just Board of Ed candidates, but community members right now are digging in to find the answers is a clear indicator that transparency and communication need to be prioritized to regain the trust with our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Regina. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Our entire team is concerned by the lack of transparency related to our budget and how money is being spent. We firmly believe that the budget setting process could be more transparent and would advocate for more public budget discussions and education sessions. We are also committed to making the bill list report public for review, as we have found that many other districts in the state of New Jersey allow the public to see just how their district is allocating tax dollars. And we believe the SOMSD should do the same. We have heard from so many families during this campaign who struggle with the tax burden of living in South Orange and Maplewood. And they wonder what services, supports, program, etc. their tax dollars afford our children in the district. We will advocate for increased transparency with the community so that every person knows how their hard-earned money is being put to life-changing use. And we will start by supporting a forensic audit as part of the board's due diligence process to confirm the financial health of the district. The board is responsible for ensuring our district is run efficiently and prudently by holding the superintendent accountable for streamlining operational costs, maximizing efficiencies, and improving the overall student experience. This ticket will prioritize student achievement, staff growth and retention strategies, and critical infrastructure needs and district goals, providing the superintendent with clear budget priorities. We will encourage him to find more opportunities for our budget dollars to directly impact students and staff through reevaluating administrative and consulting costs and legal fees by preempting legal costs related to special education services not delivered. We will ask the tough questions and make informed decisions to ensure that our budget is in lockstep with the priorities of our district and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question. In the wake of COVID, mental health issues in this country have grown massively, especially among children who suffered restricted social and emotional growth during lockdowns and school closures. Students in our district are grappling with mental and emotional health issues, sometimes contributing to tragic results. What are your ideas for addressing the expanded mental health needs of kids in the district? Regina, why don't we start with you?
Yes, this is a very serious issue that requires immediate attention. We already know that restorative justice and social emotional learning are included as a district goal for the current school year, but we need to accelerate the action plan. The restorative justice and conflict resolution trainings and measures that will be put in place. At the elementary level, I've actually seen firsthand how the elementary school social work program can benefit the younger students in our district. My daughter actually took advantage of this program last year as she dealt with social anxieties of being back in larger group settings. My husband and I were really impressed with the responsiveness of the school social worker to get her in with a social work intern, and the progress that we saw over the course of the year as she learned how to manage her feelings as a 6-year-old. Through our partnership with Family Connections, I know the district also provides school-based support programs at MMS called The Hub and at CHS called The Loft, which has been greatly received by students and families. Nubia actually brought to our attention just through her research that Governor Murphy has proposed a statewide program that may lead to losing our funding to continuing these programs in our school. These school-based programs are so important to keep in our schools. There are no financial barriers. There's no transportation barriers. So we need to start advocating for this now. Luckily, they have opened it up, and many other New Jersey school districts are speaking up against this. We would encourage you now to email the current board and the superintendent to see how we are planning for this and a backup plan. And, we also need to be researching any grants that can help fund more programming. Just in a quick Google search, a couple weeks ago, I was able to come through one that I sent to the superintendent. It recently expired, and I'm not sure what has come out of it, but because I was able to find that in a quick Google search, I'm sure there's more grants that we can be looking into this to address this dire problem. Thank you.
Thanks. Bill, over to you.
Thank you. Personally, I was extremely upset when the board majority voted in favor of a budget that did not offer additional funding for our students' social and emotional well-being. I was appalled when Dr. Taylor stated publicly that he felt the support we had in place were adequate and that he would like to take a wait and see approach before deciding if we needed additional resources. Our students are struggling. And we need to do everything we can to help them. I am happy to see that one of this year's district goals is to develop a comprehensive SEL plan for the district. When done correctly and consistently, social and emotional learning can lead to students and having fewer emotional and mental health issues. Oh, my camera's slipping. Sorry about that. Consistently, when it's done consistently, social and emotional learning can lead to students having fewer emotional and mental health issues, higher test scores, and feeling like they belong. I will work with the board to make sure the administration is following through on their goal and has the resources they need to implement it. My running mates and I will also push for more funds to be put upwards to making sure we have enough staff and programs available to help students in need. But we also need to remember it's not only our students who are struggling, our teachers are also struggling. We also need to focus on making sure that they have the resources and support they need to better serve our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And over to you, Nubia.
So I'm obsessed with mental health. I'm a mental health advocate. And I mean, look, even before COVID, this country was having a mental health crisis. COVID made it worse. I will expand a little bit on, thank you, Regina, for bringing it up, Governor Murphy's administration's changes. If you want to look up what this new program is called, it's called the New Jersey Statewide Student Support Services Network. That's like a mouthful. But basically, they're creating these 15 different hubs throughout the state for all the different counties. It's like 21 counties. And these services aren't just for youth, they're for adults as well. So these programs are going to have, students will not just have access, adults have access. I don't know how that is for division of time for those who are going to be professionals helping them. But the concern is that our programs are going to be defunded. I did some research and found that in August, the Department of Health and Human Services announced a huge award for youth mental health grants in America. It was like $40 million. And there is a program for school-based funding called the Advancing Wellness and Resiliency in Education Program. So the acronym is AWARE. It's $13.9 million. Well, that was this year. Hopefully next year they'll be giving the same amount. But if I were a board member right now, I would be looking that program up and figuring out what do we need to do to get a grant writer to help us put something together to get that money for to replace the funds that we're going to lose from the hub and from the loft. Also, we used to have liaisons to the board. And I was thinking, what if we had a mental health task force? Liaisons to the board, meaning, for example, CPAC. CPAC had a liaison to the board. They don't have one anymore. What if we had a mental health task force of volunteer students, staff who are interested in taking part in this, local professionals? We have so many amazing parents and professionals who also play a role in mental health in their day jobs or personal lives. And they can be on the pulse of what students need and create some type of program that could replace what we're going to lose. And maybe there's a way to get a grant from that. End of the day, we have to support, good point, Bill, our students and our teachers, and we have to be forward thinking, because there's a good chance we're going to lose our programs, and we have to figure it out. We have to figure out how we're going to replace them sooner than later, because we are in a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Those are great points and really important for us to keep in mind on some of these evolving policies. Our last question is about learning loss. This past September, district schools welcomed students back to a seemingly normal school year. However, it's unclear how, or even if, the district is addressing learning loss that occurred due to COVID. Some teachers have altered curricula and some haven't. How would you assess and address learning loss among our students? Bill, can you kick us off?
Yes. Yeah, sorry about that. My cell phone is acting a little funny. Learning loss is going to be something we are going to experience for years to come. There's no easy answer. And if anyone tells you otherwise, I have a bridge to sell you. The district must do a much better job of gathering data and then using it to make decisions. We also need to give teachers access to that data so they can use it to make decisions on what students need. Most folks don't realize that our teachers do not have access to the data platform where we have all our info stored. I was surprised to hear that at the last Board of Ed meeting, and even more surprised by the pushback from some of the board majority about giving teachers access to that information. I also believe that our teachers should be given flexibility to alter curriculum and to ensure they meet the needs of the students in front of them. We also need to ensure we provide opportunities for students to get help when they are struggling. Right now, most of the supports that we use are optional. We need to, like, going to a tutor, skipping lunch to see a teacher for help, or staying late to see a teacher after school. The data shows that many of our students are struggling, are not taking advantage of these resources. So we need to look at ways to bring supports to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina.
Yes, so it is a national issue that students are still suffering, and that we need to address this within our district. We saw at the August 2022 board meeting what our CHS students are going through, but we haven't seen any data regarding elementary and middle school students. STAR Renaissance tests are administered to assess if kids are at grade level or at what level they are, but it's unclear how supports and interventions are put in place. How do the results compare on average to students during a normal year, pre-COVID? It's thinking like that could allow the district to gauge if a loss has in fact occurred and to what extent. I think teachers indicate in our survey that, they don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel empowered. We need to start building a community of support and resources for them, because, they are the front lines for everything that our students are going through. So, Bill mentioned that they don't have access right now. Giving them access to this data and empowering them to make adjustments in their teachings could be a great step in the right direction. Another thing we would advocate for, the superintendent should be doing frequent check-ins with school administration, and on the board level, we would push to make it a priority to discuss at each monthly board meeting. I'd even go further to say at each committee meeting, through the lens of that specific committee, of course, We really need to prioritize collecting, analyzing student data to help inform our decisions. And until we can start doing that, I think it'll help us really dictate what immediate action needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Nubia.
So my big question is, does our district's way of assessing children need to modernize? Teachers are evaluating students right now. And I'm curious if the current intervention processes that we have are effective for the new issues that have arisen because of COVID and learning loss. The latest research and data is really scary. I mean, last year we thought we knew, but now 2022, we've learned even more. Some of the statistics coming out today are saying that average reading scores for fourth graders or 9-year-olds show that this is the sharpest decline since 1990 for reading. And why are they worried about fourth graders? Well, because by the end of third grade, your reading ability can predict educational success, career earnings, and risk of incarceration. So that is why we're now freaking out like, okay, well, now we need to figure out, do we need to adjust the way that we are looking at reading scores and the way that we're looking at how we're intervening? Another thing to keep in mind is COVID babies. NewJersey.com just did an article about this. And if you don't know what that term means, it's an increase of infants and toddlers that are unable to communicate because they were isolated for so long. And now our state has a 20% increase in families trying to get access to free or reduced therapy support for their child, intervention support for their child, because they're not speaking and communicating at the same age marks that they normally would. So these are things that really need to be investigated. I would be advocating for us to be working with Ms. Bodner to consider the weaknesses, if there are any, in our current curriculums and how we're evaluating students. And also looking at our Lucy Calkins balanced literacy approach. That's been our reading and writing approach since the 1980s. New York City just found out through evaluating that proficiency for grades 3 to 8 isn't good based on the Lucy Calkins balanced literacy approach. Because of that, they're now saying we need to focus more on phonics. And this is the approach that we use in our district. So it's something we need to investigate and really take seriously over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for all those thoughtful answers. Okay, that wraps the Q&A portion of the evening. And now we'd like to give each of you 2 minutes for some closing remarks. Nubia, why don't you keep the momentum going, and we'll start with you.
Sure, thanks. So one, thank you so much. Safe Return to School group. You all are amazing community members. We're very lucky to have you. Thank you for all who attended tonight. And just reiterating, Regina, Bill, and I really care deeply about this community. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. We have an amazing community here, and our schools need to be an asset, not a liability. I'm tired of feeling like we're in a PR crisis here. We know our school district can thrive with the right board members, and we need board members who are willing to collaborate and work hard together, no matter what slate that board member ran on before they got on the board. So we stand for change, balance, and transparency, because that's how we're going to get this community back on track. Whenever I watch BOE meetings and read about decisions made in the news, I wonder, are we all defining success for our students the same? And I'm concerned that we're not. Our kids are suffering because of that. I wrote an op-ed from our slate on the topic of redefining success, and that'll be in the latest SOMA Living magazine. So if you're getting SOMA Living magazine, please read it. I don't think it's out yet, maybe in a couple of days. But yes, thank you so much for engaging with us. And if you aren't already following us on Facebook, please do visit our website, EckertWilsonGifford.com. You can go to our Get Involved page to join our email list, take our community survey. We've also, as Regina said, we have a teacher survey that we're sending out, and that one is totally anonymous. And if you want to request a lawn sign or just ask us a question, we're very responsive over email and Facebook, because at the end of the day, we're doing this for you in the community, and we really do care. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Bill, why don't you go for it?
Yes. And well said, Nubia, as always. And I just want to thank everyone again for having this forum. You know, I can't lie. I've spoken to some people on the campaign trail, and when SOMA Safe Returns comes up, they'll say, well, why are they still around? We're back in school. My answer to that is we need organizations like this to hold our officials accountable. Too often in our country, we wait for the election cycle to get involved. Community organizers such as yourselves can keep pressure on by staying vigilant while others disengage. With that said, you have to question the character of a candidate that would shy away from meeting with a group like this. You shouldn't have to be a designated nonprofit to get the ear of your public officials. I can tell you this ticket aims to be a board that is continuously communicating with the community. That's why we are proposing such measures as participatory budgeting, neighborhood board of ed meetings, and town halls. We want to engage people beyond a monthly board meeting and provide more than 2 minutes for you to be heard. I look forward to meeting more of you in person and building a better board with your support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Regina, let's finish it off.
All righty. Well, thank you again, SRS Leadership. Thank you to all that are joining from home. I'd also like to thank Nubia and Bill for joining me on this journey. I truly could not be doing this without you and our 28 phone calls a day. You know, I also wanted to just take a quick moment to really think about, you know, why we are all here. You know, the students by far are the bright spot in all of this. Their resiliency over the past few years has proved why we're all here today for them. You know, I also think I want to mention, you know, the teachers and supporting staff. They are the backbone to our schools. And lastly, I should mention the community. While we may have different opinions on many topics, it's clear that we are all passionate, we are engaged, and it's obvious that no matter where you stand, we all want the best for our kids. The Students Come First ticket has always been honest about some of our most pressing challenges, but we see some exciting opportunities for change. We are running because we believe in public schools, and we believe in this public school district. We believe it can deliver an amazing educational and social emotional experience for our children, and we'll work hard to make that possible. So on November 8th or earlier, we ask you to vote for change, vote for balance, vote for transparency, and vote for Eckert, Wilson, Gifford, the Students Come First ticket. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. We know you're busy. You have a lot of debates going on, so we really do appreciate your time. Yeah, I think Regina said it best. Please go out and vote. It's really important, you know, that's the one message we want to leave everyone with. Please, you know, don't forget to vote. Vote. Thank you so much.